Welcome back to Connecting Conversations with your host, Evelkah Powell, and my lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Carla. Always here next to Evelkah.
That was the most dullest introduction I've heard.
All right, start again.
No, we're good. I think people know who we are now.
Yeah, that's true. I'm so relieved about that. If you don't know, just check the bios.
Just check the bios
Check
and you'll
the
be
bios,
fine.
yeah.
Look at us on LinkedIn. But no, we're so glad to be here to talk about another episode or another topic, shall I say, around relationships, because we have a whole host of different angles we wanted to look at relationships from.
Yeah.
And I think it's, relationships, as we've discussed in our previous conversation, it's one of the most important things in our life because we do life with one another and we're not an island. We need that connection with other people in order to go places, but also in order for us to do life, because life can be tough and you do need that companionship in wherever you feel comfortable. So this kind of conversation that we want to have is all about friendships, and I think we've all had various types of friendships, or what we thought were friendships. And it'll just be great to explore like even our own experiences with that. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of it all, it'll be great to understand what are friendships like, because everyone has an idea or an ideology or a school of thought about what friendships are, but what makes true friendship?
This is such a massive question. Wow. Thanks for throwing me in the deep end.
My pleasure.
I could say, so I can only go from my experience and again, the limitations of maybe just what I think what friendship should look like. And it's again an ideal. I would say friendship, like true friendship, is that mutual respect. You don't have to have two of the same people, but the respect of one another's differences and the value and appreciation in a way that is reciprocated, and it's not just one-sided. I think that is, for me, the best basis for great friendships.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking someone to be a clone of myself. One of my best friends has got a life that looks completely different to mine. She lives in a different continent entirely. She has a very different life setup. And our aspirations with finding our own paths it couldn't be like more further apart.
Okay.
But I value her so much because there is such a sense of like, it is vocalized about the appreciation and the value that we have for one another.
Yeah.
And I know what it costs her in her context to give to me, and she does it. And that for me shows me that I know that I'm not in this alone.
Yeah.
And she feels, I hope to this day, the same that I do for her.
Yeah.
And even though she lives thousands of miles away, she will never just like give me, like short answers when we try to message each other, because obviously being long distance, there is no way that I get to see her very often.
Yeah.
But if something is going on, she will give me like an essay update. She indulges me. And time is something that she doesn't have a lot of. She's a mom of 4 kids, really young kids. And like time is like pretty short,
and
precious. But she will honor me like that. And I know what that costs because I know her context.
Yeah.
And it looks so different to mine. And when I do the same for her, I find a way to be present. I used to go and visit her almost every year because as her family increased, it was less of a chance that she could come this way. The only time where that ever kind of stopped was during COVID and stuff like that. And recently, like just trying to figure out my own new context has been a challenge anyway. But like that was my way of showing you have my friendship here. And she absolutely received it like that too. So I guess this goes back to like in my ideals and my experience, friendship is not about 2 clones coming together, have the same ideas, the same beliefs, everything. It's where you really there is a genuinely known and heard and felt mutual respect and value between 2 people.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I think you're so right, because when I even look at my friendships, some are more alike than others, but for the large part of it, like we live very different lives. Like some still live at home, some are married, some live with their partners, some don't live in the country,
Yeah.
and it's so varied. And I think that's why I love like my friendships, because they're beautiful in their own way, and I appreciate every single one of my friendships. But it's also interesting when we connect with people who are like us as well, and you realize, like, okay, yeah, maybe I need to be a little bit more subtle. If that makes
They're the mirrors, the
yeah,
mirror
they're the
friendships.
mirror friendships, and they're the most revealing ones that you can have. But they're the ones that you can also learn so much from, because you see so much of yourself in those friendships, and things like that. But I had this conversation with my mom. I'm just like, I also find that, and this is no way a criticism, but I also feel that I get connected to friends where there is something spiritually or emotionally or intellectually that I can provide for them. And, I see it when there are moments of crises or challenges in some of my friends' life, and I feel like I can help fill that gap. And I'm one of those people in friendships, relationships. I'm definitely a helper. Like, if I see you in need of help, I'm there, and I try to figure it out, help you navigate it, find support in some way, shape, or form. But essentially, for me, I value friendships where I'm able to, be someone that you can count on. For me, that's the essence of friendships. It's the people that you can choose to be in your life. It's not like family; you're kind of bound with them whether you like it or not. But friendships are the people that you can actually choose to be, your lifers, and walk through life at different phases, seasons. And I truly value that aspect of friendships, and that's what I think the essence of friendships should be, is how can we lift one another up in times of need.
I think ideally that is definitely the way. And okay, for those that don't know, it's quite a big age gap between Evelkah and myself.
Here we go again.
So like, no, there is. So like, your experiences of your friendships in this season, I look forward to, like, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and how those things shift, because that's kind of the path I've had to navigate.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, I'm just gonna say it. I actually turned 40 this year, which is wild. Yeah.
Big party.
So it is a big party, and it's a privilege. Like, I mean, that's another conversation about how women feel about getting older and what age looks like in this modern era as well. It's just,
She doesn't
wild.
look 40 though.
Yeah, I love you. That's cool. But all that to say is, like, I remember, like, friendships in my 20s, in terms of that, still trying to figure out what's our dynamic, what's happening here. And you do the best that you can, but you're also still figuring out yourself. It doesn't always go well. And I remember specifically, like, some of my really core friendships in, like, university, which a lot of people identify with, like, that's like some real long standing, they may had the most influence in so much of your life. Some people actually manage to continue holding on to those past university, into career, into, like, forging new families, etc. I was not one of them.
Really?
I was not one of those people. And that was sad, because my core group, we'd had so much change, and, like, there was definitely other things at play, that, like, all that to say is, like, we actually fully disbanded, all of us.
Wow.
I wasn't connected pretty much with any one of that original central group. And I remember, like, growing up, just like, what did I do? Not what did I, it's only in lockdown recently, actually.
Okay.
This is how long it is. So I've just told you how old I am. I graduated from my first degree, which is where these conversations are kind of like coming from this story right now, was in 2005. In lockdown 2021.
Wow.
Sorry, 2020 and 2021. I had nowhere else to go, in terms of, like, you go to work, you can shelve, I don't need to pay attention to what's going on the insides of my heart, right? I had a fully fledged, like, life with my family, like, and stuff like that. I had other things outside of that as well, that, like, community focus. Like, I was busy, life was full in a good way. So I never really had to address. I was just like, okay, fine, we just moved on. But for the first time, like, I couldn't look at work and its busy kind of schedule it's set for me as an excuse to not address some of these things. And it was during just sitting in the four walls of my mind with nowhere else really to go because everybody was stuck at home. And these things really were bubbling up. And I was just like, actually, some of the stuff that happened to me in some of those friendships, and I never had the courage to speak about them, draw healthy boundaries, which we've spoken about before. And when I say that's not putting people up, but like, I didn't have the language, the confidence, the correct tools, or the entire. Okay, I'll just move on. I'm not going to hold them accountable for it. That's just where they were. That would be my kind of way to deal with it. You know, and just kept quiet about it. But I did not realize how much those negative outcomes of those friendships and what happened, what I felt to me during that time, had impacted me. And it's not necessarily about what they did. The fact is, the tearing of the breakdown of the relationship is what I'm talking about, that created the scarring and kind of like the wounds that I'd never really sat down to heal. And COVID was a crazy time. Most people didn't really know what was happening. We'd never experienced like anything like this global situation before. Young people were dying, old people were dying. You know, healthy, not healthy, were like, some were dying, some who were like the most unhealthy or the most vulnerable in terms of health were surviving it. No one really knew where it was going to strike. And I was like, I'm sitting here and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And as I sat there and all these things were coming up, I was just like, I need to go back and say sorry and forgive these people that, even though I know like I was super hurt by them, but whatever part I played, I want it to be okay, that it's like there's peace there now. Because up until this point, I honestly don't know if we were to cross each other in the road, would I be like, yeah, I'm so happy to chat to you right now? Because that's how long this has been holding on these wounds. It was a massive, massive deal. And so during COVID, I had tried to, the ones that I could find, some were not available. I've also been blocked by some of them as well, which is also very interesting because, yeah, that was just an interesting kind of thing. But ones that I'd actually had like major conflict with. And I was just like, look, I just want to say sorry for what I did in this thing. And I reached out to them. They're married, they have twins and kids, and they've got this vibrant life. And I said, look, I just wanted to reach out. Like, this is a crazy time. And I don't know, even firstly, I hope you're okay. Or there's loved ones around you, if they're struggling and what's happening. And it wasn't just the health thing. Like, people were losing jobs. They were losing relationships because for the first time, like, people were dealing with having to deal with like their spouses or live-in partners in a way that they couldn't get away from them. So it really brought to the surface terrible. People broke down like families and homes during that time. And I was like, I just want to know that you're okay. And I just want to say that I wishing you the best. But more than anything, I thought it's important that I remember the way that I conducted myself during this time. And I just want to say sorry for my part. It wasn't like, and you did this and you did that. I just want to say sorry for my part. And the response that I got from so many of those spaces, just, it wasn't their response, but it was, I think, the action of releasing and forgiving that I've had, it shifted something inside me as a person. I realized I've been walking around figuratively a little bit like with kind of like a limp, if that makes sense. Not fully myself. I hadn't quite recovered from, and we're talking, this is almost a decade ago, if not more, of time that's gone by. And I just felt like such a different sense of like relief. And the responses that came back were like, this is so kind of you, so you didn't need to send this to me. But what I would say is just like, I've done worse things since that time, Carla, but this means so much to me. Like, I definitely was hurt in that moment, but I appreciate what you're doing here and stuff. And it just freed me. It freed me so much. And I think what's also made it difficult is like, I think as a result of that, yes, there was that moment of like, almost like resolve in that action. But what I also found is like, it clearly had really hindered my approach and being open to forging new friendships thereafter. And I don't know how much women, particularly, I can't speak for men because they seem to be a lot easier in dealing with their conflicts and then moving on from it, or they drift away because their priorities are different and then they don't hold it against each other. I
Yeah.
find that more common from certainly my husband's circle and how they navigate stuff.
Yeah.
But with women, like, we hold on to these hurts, and
We
I was
do.
realizing this is really impacting. Like, I'm just like, yeah, maybe I won't impose myself on this person. They might not like me, or
Yeah.
maybe I won't put myself in the position to be hurt again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're now in your 30s, and like late 30s, because that was like, I was like 36 years old then by
Yeah.
that time when this stuff was going down in 2020, 36. And like, I was just like, I don't know, like, how do I forge new friendships? And what I did find was actually more often than not, the minute I voiced that amongst other women in similar kind of contexts or kind of like generation as me,
Yeah.
whatever, saying exactly the same thing.
It definitely gets harder as you get older.
That is not a vote of confidence for me, but I'm out here trying anyway.
But you got me in the midst of it all.
Send help quick.
But I think it's so true. And just touching on your earlier points around dealing with friendships and loss of friendships, I think, we talk a lot about, getting out there, finding new friends, but there is a real thing of holding on to those grudges, those experiences that have hurt us, that have not allowed us to really explore what new relationships can be like, because we're so crippled by the experiences of what went before. And I think it's so easy for us to be like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything wrong, and just leave it be. But internally, that something doesn't sit well, and therefore you need to come to the revelation of it all, that look,
I had my 50% to play.
I had my 50% to play. I had my part to play, even if it was, a touch or a dab, it was still something in there. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge within friendships, but also the breakdown of friendships, that, it takes two to tango. Someone was hurt because of what someone else did. And, someone may have retaliated in a way that wasn't quite well received either. So I think we really must take stock as to who we are in that moment, and what part we play in the breakdown of any relationships or friendships or any ships we're in.
True that.
Because it can lead us to alienate ourselves from new things and new experiences and new people, because we're just so fearful of what the outcome may be. And I think even going into some of my relationships at I would say specifically at high school, you have your high school friends, and that's all great. But then I had this one friend, very different from me, very different background. We got closer towards the latter end of high school, and when I think it's interesting, again, taking a step back, where relationships or friendships change when you change. Because that's when like, something's about to go down, because they start to see you change. They don't see you as the person they thought or knew you for. And because you act differently, or you're now in a different environment, they feel that it's a bit of a betrayal. And I think that goes back to a lot of internal stuff, trauma and all of that. But there was this one friend I was really close to when I was then moving schools to go to sixth form. Her behavior changed. She got really jealous. She got really insecure because I was making new friends at this new school, to the point where she got really defensive. And if I said I can't go out with her, she would be like, well, I don't want to talk to you, or I don't want to do this, or she would just become very aggressive with it all. And I remember thinking, I don't have time for you. So in the end, our friendship fell apart and we stopped talking. But fast forward 6-7 years later, again during COVID. I don't know what happened during
I think
COVID,
everyone had an experience during COVID.
but
Mm-mm.
me and her, reconnected during COVID. And, it started off very innocent,
Mm.
in terms of, hi, how are you? Just very natural, nothing forced. And then I made the first move and I said, we should meet up, because in my head, I knew exactly, and I remember quite vividly the reason why we stopped being friends at the time. And so she agreed to meet up with me. We had a coffee, and I said, do you even remember why
Mm.
we stopped talking or why we stopped being friends? And she was just like, actually, I don't. And because again, I'm saying this from when you're a lot younger, you just kind of make friends, you lose friends, and you think that's the natural process of life. But that friendship, the ending of that friendship had marked something in me,
Mm.
to the point where I couldn't forget what she said or what she did, because it was also on the premise of me pivoting into a whole new field and new environment. So it was one of the turning points in
Mm.
my while I was growing up. And so we sat down and I said, well, I actually remember. And we explored it. And I said, and she was just like, oh, yes, now I do remember. And she was just like, I am sorry for the part I played. And she actually opened up as to why she found it hard at the time to see me with other friends, because she was really close to this one friend from primary school, the early stages of high school, like year 7
Mm.
up to year 9, year 10. She was really close to this one girl. And because this girl got a boyfriend, she kind of
Mm.
slowly
Yeah, just like let it
strayed away.
drift away. Yeah.
And they were friends for years. And she said, because she had seen it happen before,
She was trying to
she
protect
was she was
herself
trying
from.
to protect
Yeah.
herself from it happening again. And when you're younger, you don't really know how to articulate these kind
Mm-hmm,
of
mm-hmm,
things. But
mm-hmm.
sitting down exploring it with her, I was just like, that makes so much sense why she was holding on to me so much, and why she felt, in her head, she felt I was betraying her. But in my head, I was just like, I'm still going to be a friend, but I'm going to have other friends too.
Mm-hmm.
um in the end, we chatted out, and we're now like, I wouldn't say we're as close as we once were, but we still speak to each other.
Mm-hmm,
I've met
mm-hmm.
up with her a number of times since that first interaction. But it was interesting how the ending of that friendship led to creating space to form a very different relationship and friendship now. So it's crazy how things, do come back
Mm-hmm.
to you. And, I'm not saying every friendship is to
Something you
be,
should go back to.
you should
Yeah.
go back to.
Sometimes you need to leave that
That
in
that
the
was
past.
that was a very unique
Yeah.
situation. And
Yeah.
she's probably one of the only people
Mm.
that I've ever like re-engaged friendship with. But there was something there that just felt really unresolved,
Mm.
something that neither of us had closure from, because we literally like cut it off. Like, I'm not speaking to you. We've unfollowed each other on social media. I don't even remember how we started following each other again, but it happened. But it was just, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying every friendship can be reestablished or renewed in that way. But I think it's the approach that we take in how we handle our friendships is what matters the most.
I agree. It's a complex space, but it's
Oh,
such a
yeah.
necessary one because we need those interactions and those kinds of dynamics really like help to forge the kind of person you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think as I've got older, like my husband talks about this a lot, like who are your 5 closest people? The 5 closest people and friends that you have is actually what your life is going to look like.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not about necessarily the friendships are always equal. And when I say that, ideally you also want people in your life that are going to push you to go to
100%.
further destinations that you maybe have not gone yet. And
Mm,
that doesn't mean that you are someone that needs to be catered to and you are the lead ball that they have to drag along the way.
yeah.
You need to make sure that you're also providing your own sense of
Rubbing
value.
shoulders with the right
Yeah,
people.
but you bring your own sense of value to them in a different way.
Mm,
And like that's something that it's, I think as I'm getting older, particularly on journeys with entrepreneurship, or
Mm.
you're trying to build a future and a life, like what's happening in those friendships.
Yeah.
We've spoken about obviously with my story in terms of how that really has hindered my ability to almost branch out and forge new
Yeah.
connections in a kind of a healthy and in a more an open way, or a way that doesn't start with a filter of distrust.
Yeah.
Because I think that's hard, because if you're going to start with a filter of distrust, which is what I was doing historically for such a
Wow.
long time, you've already put up blockages, and people are going to react to, like, they can sense that this
Mm.
is not something
But
they
how
can't
did
pick
you
up.
overcome that? So you said you've reached out to those people,
Yeah,
you forgave them.
I think I'm still learning. I can't
Okay.
say that I've arrived. It's
Okay.
definitely like a work in progress, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And I'm
Yeah.
for myself personally, I have found this benefit in leaning into that tension again.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is probably another transition moment, if we're going to say that again, because like it's okay to be learning. To be honest, it's like, this is
Mhm.
so sad that, like, where are my people and my friends now?
Yeah.
I've got one friend thousands of miles away,
Yeah.
but the sadness is I kind of need people that I get to do life with. Who are
Yeah.
those things? Who are those people?
Yeah.
And like they will come in really different and like maybe more like magical ways. I'm going to say that
Yeah.
because we have a different friendship, and
Yeah.
this came because I put myself out there in a very different way.
Yeah.
And not only is this a connection that's like has friendship to it, but it started off as a professional one.
Yeah, it did.
But like the whole point is, like, I needed to lift that filter a little bit and just like, you
Mm.
have to be kind of open.
Yeah. And I think you definitely have to explore.
Mm-hmm.
You need to explore, like you said, put yourself out there. You need to trust yourself.
And also give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you show people that you believe goodness in them, more often than not,
Mm.
they want to rise to that, because
Yeah.
they feel valued and appreciated on that thing that you are identifying in them.
Yeah.
And that's tough going when, like, if you've been kind of broken and you've been kind of bruised
Mm.
by life, and where friendships have gone kind of awry. But like in the same breath, I'm just like, I also noticed for some reason there's a lot of women that feel the same way, so they've stopped reaching out. I'm like, you're also a different person now, and you mentioned this
Yeah.
earlier. Like in a different season, I'm still me, but I'm also a very different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, if you're down for figuring stuff out and you want to do that and you want to journey and you want to build, I can get on board with that. Let's
Yeah.
go there together. And I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And if you can't meet my expectation, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
also one thing I think we don't talk about enough, is like, oh, do we have healthy and realistic expectations in
Oh
our
gosh.
friendships, right? Because so many times are like, this is what I need my friend to do. And a lot of that is self-focused.
Yeah.
Not like, what am I coming alongside someone to build with? And then we both get
Mm.
enriched,
Yeah.
right? So when
And
I,
this is where, for me, where I guess unintentionally have friendships where I pour a lot into those people, and not to say I'm getting something in return, at like nothing at all, but it's more like, how can I help you to get on the next level? As you know me, I'm one of those people that if you're in my circle, I'm going to push you to be the best person.
I think she takes no prisoners on that front. Like,
Yeah.
everybody, you can't, this is not your best self. Why are we
Yeah,
not moving
I'm
that
just like,
direction?
I know, like, there is potential. Let's fulfill that potential. So if you're riding with me, best believe I'll help you get to your destination however way I can. So for me, the circles that I have are people who I feel like I can pour into them with the tools, the knowledge, the understanding that I have, in order to help them reach whatever goals they want to reach. And I'm not saying that my friends don't do the same thing. Like, one of my friendship groups, like I said, we're all single. We're trying to navigate this dating well. They share their stories, I share mine. We're just like, okay, how are we going to make this work? Where are we going? Like, we connect and we share stories, we share frustrations together, we share the struggles, but we also share, okay, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, maybe if you try this, or maybe if you try that, so we figure it out together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So right now, and this may be, very early for me to say, but I feel comfortable with the friends that I have in my life currently, because they all provide value to me in some way, shape, or form, and I do the same thing. And I say to to my friends, like, I'm sorry, you're stuck with me. We, even if we may not be as close as we are today, best believe I'll be your biggest cheerleader no matter what. And I think I had a lot of traumatic relationships growing up, so I think I learned very early on about the fruitfulness of friendships, but also the loss of friendships. And just taking it back, one of the most traumatic scenarios that happened to me was when I was living back home, and I don't know why. We were like, I would say I was less than 9 years old, and I was in this group of friends, and we had this thing. I don't know why we thought it was a good thing, but part of me is now thinking it was a resilience and character building now. But it's such a weird concept. But we had this thing where every week we would stop talking to someone in our friendship group. It was the
This is
most
Mean Girls.
silliest,
I have no
weirdest
words for this nonsense. I have none.
thing I've, and like, I look back and I'm just like, why did we do that? Like, what was the sense of it? But as kids, you don't know any better. But it was like, now looking back, it's interesting to see how our mindset around friendships were, in the sense of, well, I don't have to be friends with you if I don't want to be. Very transactional, very loose, nothing as deep and committed as the friends that I do have now. And there was one time, and I think this is what really traumatized me about friends. We were out in the playground again. I was about less than 10 years old, and one of my friends got injured, and everyone threw the blame on me. And I had to, unfortunately, deal with the consequences of that. Even the girl that got injured, knowing that it wasn't me that um impacted her in that way,
You weren't
or
the perpetrator.
I weren't the perpetrator in that incident, but she went on the bandwagon and said that it was me, knowing well that it wasn't. And I think that really traumatized me as to, are friends actually a real thing? Like, does real friends really exist? And I grew up with that hesitancy, throughout school. That mindset of, I need to be very cautious and vigilant about certain people, because people could just,
Mm.
stab you in the back. And my mom used to always say, be careful with people, because you never know how people can stab you in the back, and blah blah blah. So in a sense, I grew up with this kind of fear. But the more I started to open up myself, the more I started to explore what friendship can actually look like, I've now overcome that fear. And I now feel like I have the best circle of friends I've ever had in my entire life so far. And I'm so grateful to have these people around me, including yourself. But it it really taught me over the years, like, what's the value of friendships. And I definitely feel like now I've gotten a better understanding. I'm not saying that, I'm not going to learn more. I'm sure there will be more experiences that I haven't quite yet experienced. But right now, I'm quite content with the people that I have in my life.
I think it's really interesting that you spoke about just those different stages, but also, like, if you look at those different stages, our expectations of friendships also
Change.
change.
Oh wow,
And
yeah.
I really want to circle back to the expectations chat, because I think
Mm,
this is also something coming out of it. Sounds like we've both had,
yeah,
really defining experiences with relationships and friendships, particularly.
yeah, yeah,
But like, my expectations have shifted in terms of, I am okay that maybe you don't feel, I don't need you to give me my sense of self-worth.
yes,
What can we join together on a journey, is
yeah,
where I think we find ourselves talking about now.
yeah, yeah,
And also, even outside of that, like, you expect people to see things the way that you do, or like have the same prioritization that you do. It's like,
yeah,
there's a real, I think, if we want to do this friendship thing well, is take the step back and be honest to, like, how much am I interested in you, and
mm,
learning about your journey and coming for the ride, rather than I expect you to basically think the same way as me, because then
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's definitely something we need to learn more. Like, it's quite like self. What's it feeling in me, and we need to take huge assessment of that, and the types of people that we want to
yeah,
start calling friends,
yeah, yeah.
particularly if they've got a
And
different mindset
sometimes
to
we
you on that.
place high expectations on our friends, and when they don't fulfill them,
we are
we are
disappointed. But
disappointed.
it might be that is the best that they are doing. Does that make
100%.
sense? And it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you get to be treated poorly. But what I'm
100%.
saying is, like, for example, in case in point, just to make sure we've got some form of illustration, because it's a wafty comment to say, but just to give some kind of measuring gauge. So, for example, if my strength is that I love to prepare like parties and surprises for my friend,
Yeah.
but that's not a strength of theirs, and they don't do that for me, but their strength is like literally when it comes down to giving me strategy and plan and something else.
Yeah.
Like, be good to know that that's where your differences are. Like,
Yeah.
that might be your love language, but it might not be theirs.
Yeah.
And like, I think there's an ownership and an accountability, and I think you mentioned this earlier about like, we need to take command of that 50% that we
Yeah.
contribute to that space too.
Yeah. Yeah. And stop seeing friendships as transactional, or any relationship,
Yeah.
because you're never going to get the same 50% that you put in.
That you think you put
That
in.
you think
because you might be getting 80% from them. Your 50% is like, oh, that's all I got. Sorry.
Yeah. So we really need to, be rid of that mindset and that mentality, and really, be true to who we are, but also be true to the people that are around us. And I think, we can build very beautiful friendships. It takes time. You
Or
find
not
your tribe.
always. Or not always. Sometimes you can make friends real quick. That's how we got friends.
I know.
And here we are.
Wow. Look at us. I do love you though.
Oh gosh. I think this is a good time to end this podcast. Before this goes in any other direction.
I'm just gonna like hug her.
Great. Okay.
You're just like,
oh. Okay. Anyway, thank you for being with us for another incredible conversation. Continue to subscribe, like, comment, tell us about our weird dynamic. We want to hear it. It's great.
Tell us about your friendships.
And tell us about how you feel about friendships, how you've been navigating it. Maybe there's something that you can teach us as well.
Yeah, we're always here to learn too. So
all right.
Thank you all. Bye.